obviously the project didn't happen or it was the wrong color, like I say, you know, sometimes you don't get the decision on the color. You know, you might be able to take those 2 cans of stain and create something that will work for you into the future. You know, if you're looking for something with a little bit more orange tinge to it, then go into using like adding the colonial maple or the gunstock color. If you need red, go with mahogany, the red mahogany or the red oak or something like that to create the color tones you want. It's an easy way to do it. It doesn't cost a lot of money to formulate up something, but it's one of those things. Sometimes getting the exact right color is the key element. Sometimes the different species of wood you're working with will make the color appear quite a bit differently. You know, what most of our sample boards you see in the store, you'll see them on pine, you'll see them on oak. Well, we know there's more species of wood than pine and oak out there. But what these 2 species do for us is shows what it's like on a softwood and how much color intensity you're putting on with each color and on a hardwood. So it just kind of educates you on how much is there, you know, how much color volume you're getting in there. So keep that in mind. Do that little bit of playing around there. With a water-based stain and conditioner, how many people use water-based stains and conditioners? Anybody? Okay, a few guys, yeah. This time of year, it's a great option to have, you know, because maybe your finishing area isn't warm, isn't heated. You know, it's a little bit tough to find a good place to work from. With a water-based system, you can really create a good volume of color with a water-based system, and you don't have to worry about driving everybody out of the house either. You can take a spare room in the house and actually use that to create a color. Got a sample here showing with a water-based. This one here has water-based without water-based conditioner here. With water-based conditioner, 1 coat of stain and 2 coats of stain. So what you're seeing is increased color volume from 1 coat to 2 coats on that water-based system. And that's one of the key things to keep in mind. With a water-based system, you're always going to build color volume on the surface because it doesn't penetrate the same amount as an oil-based does, so it's going to build on the surface. So when you see those sample boards in the store, this is what they're showing on the 2-coat system. I want to pass this around, and this one has already got a finish on it, but just run your hand up along here where there is no conditioner and there is stain on it and a top coat on it. You'll feel the difference in here compared to here. It's quite a bit of difference to it. And what that, and what this will do for you is understand that, you know, when you're using a water-based stain, the conditioner is probably the most key element you can go to. With that conditioner, what it does for you is initially it pops the grain. Oh, they want it backwards right now. What initially it does is when you put this on there, it actually pops the grain, and then with a water-based conditioner, the big difference between it and an oil, the oil you work with it, it's in a moist condition. The water-based you work with it when it's in a dry condition. So you put this on, wipe it off, give it about 15 to 30 minutes to dry, then lightly sand the grain raising off with about a 220 grit paper, and then put your stain on it. So you really don't have to wait very long at all. Put the conditioner on it, put your first coat of stain on it. 2 hours later, you can put a second coat of stain on it, and away you go. One of the biggest things about the water-based system is when we brought it out, we were not the first ones to bring water-based to the market. There was a lot of other brands out there that tried it first, and they brought along a lot of different things, and they said that this is the greatest thing because it's low odor, it's an easy soap and water cleanup, but everybody hated it because it didn't perform to what they wanted to do with it. By creating this conditioner, we know how well our conditioner worked for us in our oil base, so we knew that it was important to have that conditioner. So what we did is we created this conditioner, and what it does, it not only helps raise the grain initially and sand off your grain raising so you don't get that roughness in your finish. The other thing it does is uniforms your color penetration the way a conditioner does. But the main thing I find is it gives you more work time to put that water-based stain on. The biggest problem with the water-based stain I've always found is you put it on, as soon as you hit the water-based stain hits the wood, it's already drying. It's already, the cloth is dragging on there. With the conditioner on there and sand it off, you've got about a 3-minute open time. You can put that stain on and wipe it off. You've got good flow time to be able to do your project. And that really makes a big difference on what your appearance is going to be. Yes?
You can use conditioner, stain, pre-sander, that sort of thing?
And you can, yes, you can put the sanding sealer on it. Yes, absolutely, over top of your stain. But the key thing is, when you put it over top of your stain, you got to be careful that you don't sand through too far through your sanding sealer. The sanding sealer is recommended to sand with 320 grit paper, and you're not really sanding it. You're just taking off the high points. Really, is all you're doing is just giving it a little bit of abrasion to give it a place for the top coats to bond to. But yes.
On your water-based stains, you said 220 grit on sandpaper. Is that for hard-edged softwood?
Yeah. When you're for your fine sanding before you stain. With the water-based system, usually I'll still stick with the 150 to 180 on a hardwood, and then 220 to 180 on a softwood, depending on the softness of the wood. With the water-based system, everybody's probably got one of these guides. If they don't, there's still one up here that they'll show you a range of colors in the guide here. Now, when you go in the store, you're not going to see those colors on the shelf anywhere. They actually formulate them up for you in the store. So they tint them for you. This is page 11. Okay, so all these colors are available in the water-based system, and you can get some really nice wood tones in there as well as and some of the softer colors and different colors. So if you're looking for some accent colors, it is definitely a great way to go. Once you get on to working with a water-based system, what I find with it as well is if I'm working on something that has a solid and veneer, or something that maybe an inexpensive back panel in it, maybe a birch or poplar or something like that in the back panel of it, by putting 2 coats of stain on it, the condition it and 2 coats of stain, the color will uniform pretty good from a solid to a veneer or from one species to another, because you're building the color on the surface. So you get a lot more uniformity of color to the actual water-based stain than you would with an oil-based, because the oil-based works on the pores of the wood, where the water-based works on the surface of the wood, right? Yes?
So on your color system, you're working with the store's color system?
That's correct, yeah.
So they take in, you take in a sample?
Yeah, they have formulas that they can actually tint them up, and they're using the colorants from the paint system. Yeah. And a few years ago, when they changed to no VOC formulas and their colorants and that, we've done a retest on them and everything works fine, so there's not an issue with them. Anybody that's got our formulas that is a dealer can definitely tint the color for you. So
you don't have that available in your oil?
Not in the oil, no.
Do you think you will, or is it?
No. The problem with it is that when you start adding colorants to oil, it separates out. It doesn't want to, totally blend, and then you get a lot of unevenness of color volume, right? So that's why we've stayed kind of away from that on that system.
So do you sell any colors in the?
Any colorants?
No, any colors in the water base.
Yeah, they're pretty much like there's 60 or 70 colors available.
Right, but if you go to the store, will they have 5 available, or will you just?
No, what they'll do is they'll pick you up a base can like this, okay, and then it's either a clear tint base or a white tint base, okay, and they'll add the colorants to it. Yes?
So, which is easier to work with, the water-based stain or the oil?
Yes.
Which is easier?
Yes. Usually, one of the things I've learned over the years is that there's times when I like a water base a lot more than I like an oil base, but there's times when an oil base is much more beneficial to the wood than a water base. If it's a solid wood surface, like a solid tabletop or anything like that, or solid, I like oil because it helps stabilize the moisture content. If I'm working with a lot of veneers or sheet goods or anything like that, the water base is nice because it can build more color volume on that thin amount of volume, right? Like when you're talking adding color to a veneer that's micro thin, with an oil base you can't get the color volume to there. And a lot of times what you'll see when you put an oil base on top of a very thin veneer, sometimes you can even see the glue showing through on the veneer, right? With the water base, it builds on the surface, the color builds on the surface, so you can build that color volume up a little bit more. If you're trying to get a more intense color, sometimes the water base is a little bit easier to get there because it does build that color on the surface. It's a personal preference, but if you learn how to work with both of them, it can be beneficial because it does give you that opportunity to expand what you can do and what you can create. Yes?
What's the smallest container you will custom color?
A quart, a liter size, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't apply, but doing water stains or what, you can actually blend two stains.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you do it with this?
With the water base?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it a number of times. Some of the things that you'll find is that if you can't pick exactly the color you want there, sometimes it's a shade, really close on the shade, like 1 coat, 2 coats, and as you can see with that board that went around, with 1 coat, 2 coats, it actually increases the color volume. The third coat would even make it more intense. But if I find that that's close to the color, but I need a little bit more of a hue of something in there, a little, like a little darker green or whatever, you can take and mix 2 colors together. But you got to be very careful when you start mixing dark stains with light stains. The smallest amount, a few drops sometimes can make a big jump on the color volume, right? You're working with the same base, you're working with the same colorants, there's no problem mixing them together as long as you stay in the water-based system. Yeah. Can't take an oil and water, mix them together, they just don't work that way. But it definitely can work for you and with mix multiple colors together. So sometimes you can get, if you're trying to get a 50 Shades of Gray, for example, you can basically start off with a white, a gray, a mid-tone gray, and a black, and you can go as far as you want to get that tone to where you want to be, right? So it really is very, very creative as far as what you can go with your colors. Now, the thing about water-based stains and oil-based stains is, a lot of times you'll get that volume of color on there, and you say, well, gee, that's really good. I've got to where the color volume I want, but you want to do a little bit of antiquing, you want to do a little bit of shading, maybe you want to add a little bit more color volume. Maybe you're working on something that just won't give you the color volume that you want itself. Like a lot of times when I get into working with cherries and maples and ashes and stuff like that, that really has a hard time taking any amount of color into it. Where I work from on that situation is more into the gel stain formula. We do make a gel formula as well. So this helps you create the color volume you want. If anybody has ever tried to put stain on one of these appliques, on an old piece of furniture, you maybe stripped something off and you had that piece of that applique that on the front there, you stripped it off and the wood was white underneath there, and then you go to put stain on it, it really doesn't penetrate any color to it. With a gel stain, you can actually build color volume on the surface with it. And a gel stain will work on surfaces that are non-penetratable too as well. It will work on wood, definitely on wood to give you color. But if you're working on something that maybe has a fiberglass door, for example, a hardboard door, a steel door, a steel panel and something, or you maybe had a spot where the bit of glue was squirted out and you didn't notice it, and you try to put a stain on it and it won't take the stain, you can actually come along with a gel stain and actually put gel stain over top of it and build color on there. It's great a lot of times for repairs. Maybe you've done something, you had a fairly large damage on a piece of wood, and you're trying to bring a color volume up into it. You can actually use a gel stain to do that. And I've done it in the past using, where you get into using maybe a high-performance filler like this to fill in a very large hole or some area where there's been a lot of damage in it. This is a 2-part product, putty body and a cream hardener. It doesn't want to take much color because it is a very tough product. It doesn't shrink, it doesn't crack, so it doesn't have much penetration level. So you can get a little bit of color with the penetrating oil in there, but if you want to make it look more like wood or more like that, what I've done in the past is just taken a little bit of gel stain with an artist brush, draw in a few grains on it, let it set, come back and put another little coat on it and let it build up and build your color up. Sometimes for a repair, it's a great way to work. If you have cherries or something like that, cherry is one of those ones, and maple is the same way. I find a lot of times it has a tendency, when you put a penetrating stain on it, it blushes and it creates a lot of haziness in the grain and that type of stuff, where a gel stain will give you a much more uniform toning and color for there. It also works great if you're trying to distress a piece, make it look a little bit more aged. You can put a penetrating water-based stain or a penetrating oil-based stain on first, and then come along with a gel stain and wipe a little bit of this over top of it and build color in some areas or not in other areas, create more color volume that way as well. If I'm using a gel on a softwood, especially, like if it's a very soft porous piece of wood, then I'll use the oil-based conditioner first, put it on, wipe it off, let it dry for at least an hour and a half, and then I could go ahead and put the gel on.
What about maple?
Maple, again, you could definitely do it. What the conditioner is going to do for you is help stabilize the moisture content in the wood and minimize the cupping and warping and shrinking in that, and then the gel will build your color on the surface. So it helps with the, especially on your end grain and routed edges and anything like that, where it's going to take dark, drastic looking color. It'll help uniform it out. But I really find that when I'm working with stuff like ash, where it doesn't want to take any amount of color at all, I still would hit it with a penetrating stain and then come along with a gel afterward and build more color up to it. If you let your penetrating stain dry, so it's dry to the surface, you can come along with the gel over top of it and create a nice color volume on there as well. Okay? Time goes very quickly here, and I know I don't know how stringent you guys are for the 8 o'clock curfew here, and you kind of go as long as
Some of these guys are getting back to the nursing home.
Okay. Well, I don't see any anklets, so I just wondered if you're on good behavior or not.
Actually, two questions.
Sure.
I stained the window today in an older home we were doing in Fort Hope, and I noticed I had put a conditioner on it, and I noticed some spots are really dark, and other ones look like they don't want to take anything.
Mm-hmm.
Is my second coat going to?
Probably not.
No.
And some of it could be the amount of, especially on a window, if it's a lot of moisture into it, or there could be something in the window that's old, that's inhibiting from penetration. I would probably suggest getting your hands on a bit of gel stain. And I think the Home Hardware there you're in Port Hope, you said? And I think the Home Hardware there in Port Hope has to, I think he has our gel stain. Sometimes this question that comes up a lot is people ask where they can get our products and the best, assortment. Understanding your local dealers are a good place to go and ask. Just ask them the question. If there's something you're looking for, ask them for it, because they may not have ever been asked for it before, and they wouldn't bring it in because there's no call for it. Their stores are limited in how much space they can hold, so just feel free to ask them, and they'll tell you whether it's listed. If you know what the product is and what the name of it is, and they'll look it up for you on their listing and see if it's available to them. Most of our products are available to most of our dealers, so it's just a matter of sometimes they have to special order or something. Some of the stores don't special order, so it becomes an issue. You have to go someplace. Tell you that Home Hardware lists about 90% of what we own, so if you're looking for it, there's always a good place to go and ask there as well.
My second question is.
Okay.
Second question was the reboxing some beams using 1x6 pipe. And I stained though about a week ago, laying flat and did all that. I noticed when the installer put them in, I had some runs. Now, can I sand that out, or do I have to put another second coat of?
If it's just stain on there at this point,
Yeah.
the best thing to do is go back with it.
Conditioner on as well, sorry.
Yeah, the best thing to do is, if it hasn't got a top coat on it, the best thing to do is go back and take a bit of stain, wet it, and then wipe it back off. Usually what the stain will reactivate any excess that's on the surface and allow you to wipe it off and clean it up. If you take and sand it, you're going to wear through the color, and you're not going to get that uniform color back in there.
So just keep working with it.
Yeah, wet it down, let it sit for a few minutes, and come back and wipe it off. It should take off the excess for you. Okay? Yes?
In your final finishes, can you put a satin finish over a gloss?
You can, but you still have a gloss.
Can you reverse that? Can you put a gloss over satin?
You can definitely do that. The thing about polyurethanes and films is each coat you put on, it always increases the gloss. So if you put a gloss on and then put semi-gloss on it, you're still going to have a gloss. If you put a gloss on, put satin on it, you're still going to have a gloss. The only way to really bring it back to a satin is to sand it back down to basically there's hardly any film left there, and then put a satin on it. What happens is every coat amplifies itself, right? It just builds on intensity.
If you had a gloss and you wanted it down to a satin, can you put a conditioner on it and then basically put it down?
No, you have to take the film back to the point where it's down to the sheen is low enough